This is my Nonno, Lucio D'Andrea, a proud Italian-American husband, father, grandfather, and immigrant success story. Born on March 28, 1933 in the small village of Roccamandolfi, Lucio paved his way from virtually nothing to having a catalog of experiences that few can match. He was proud of his heritage, and he instilled this pride in anyone he met. Today I'm going to sit down with him and learn more about what made his path so unique.
Roccamandolfi. That's my village in Molise. Oh my goodness, the earliest thing I remember is I was an altar boy, and being an altar boy in a village meant a lot because you were involved in weddings, funerals, and going homes for less rites. And as a child, I was 8 years old, the most overwhelming impression is when we had to go to some of these homes that were very old homes that the owner, the household, they passed away, and we had to go with the priest to give the last rites. And we walked in and saw this body lying in bed, and I'm 8, 9 years old, holding holy water, and I look at the living bed, had bandage around her head, keep her mouth closed. It was an impression that at my age, of course, very striking. But then in our village, of course, we were a very small village of only about 3,000 people, and we had to be very creative. We had to create your own toys, and we made our own cart, our own skateboard, the whole thing like that. And we used to play soccer, not having a soccer ball. We would get rags, wrap them in a roll into a ball, and play soccer with that,
So at what age did you start hearing talk that your family was going to move to the States?
Well, the way our situation was such that we lived in our village. My mom, my brother, older brother Joseph, and lived in the village of Roccamandolfi. And Dad lived in the United States at the time, So after the war, Dad said, okay, it's time for you to come to the United States. So he made the arrangements for us to settle and join him up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time, where he worked. And I didn't know my father until I came to the United States. He left when I was...
He spent all of his time in the United States when you were young?
Yeah. I was 3 years old when he left. So I hadn't seen him for 11 years. So I met my father the first time when I came to the United States in 1947. And for me, of course, at that age, not having a father, was quite an adjustment because my mom was everything to me, was mother, father. So it was not easy was a process of adaptation. It took a while to get used to it because my father was a very disciplined man. He was not severe, but he was quite disciplined on us, me and my brother, of how we conduct ourselves, how we behave. So it was quite an adjustment.
So why Pittsburgh, of all places?
Well, because Dad, when he was a young man, men from Italy looking for a job, there was no job in a village, so they immigrated to the United States invariably. And then my dad ended up in Pittsburgh because a relative of his lived in Pittsburgh, so he arranged to have somebody to be a sponsor. And they came to the States in 1920, first time. And he settled outside of Pittsburgh, in Bergenstown, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. And he was a bricklayer at the time. And after the war, we joined him and settled in a little village of McKees Rocks, outside of Pittsburgh. Yeah.
What were some of the biggest adjustments moving from Italy to Pittsburgh?
For me, I didn't have a problem because really I was, 14 years old, and I was very open, gregarious, and I immersed myself with the local kids, in the neighborhood. I began to play basketball with, well, in those days, they don't have any basketball court. They would put a hook on the side of the telephone pole, and then if you had a basketball, you play basketball that way, and in the street. And because of this immersion with these young, kids of the same age, I learned English very quickly. I learned also some of the bad words in English too.
What was it like starting high school in McKees Rocks?
Well, I didn't, now mind you, we didn't know a word of English. I mean, we arrived in Norwood, where Dad had rented a house, and this was in January. So Dad said, okay, it's time for go to school. There was a local elementary school. And my dad took me and my brother Joseph to the local school. And my dad knew the principal of the school, Mr. Ciccone. So there we are. And my dad, the three of us went to school. He looked at the teacher and said, teach my kids some English. That's began my classes. And because of us not knowing a word, that places me in the first grade. And it was so awkward because the seats were not designed for my age or for kids as well. So I couldn't sit in those chairs too well. And not knowing any English, of course, I was bored. So I look at the walls and I see a picture of Lincoln, a picture of Washington. I would sketch during while the class went on because I didn't know what was going on. And then slowly I began to get enough knowledge, acquire enough knowledge of English that I was able to enter the local secondary school, and then from there to high school and so on, and graduated in 1952.
So at what point in your educational career, I understand you went to the engineering school at Pitt.
Yeah.
So at what point did you make the decision that you wanted to go into petroleum engineering?
Okay, well, there's a story about that too, because I didn't know, I graduated from high school. I did quite well in high school for an immigrant kid. I had honors, National Honor Society, all that stuff. So I'm sitting in the kitchen when a friend of my father came to visit him, and they were chatting with his son, and his son, or this friend of my father, I felt to him that he was taking petroleum engineers at Penn State University. And I said, what do you do with petroleum engineer? Well, you do this and that. So he said, most of the time you're outdoor working on the field. Soon he said outdoors, and I said, that's it. I'm going to study engineering, so I'd be outside rather than inside to work. And so that's what happened. I made the decision that morning pretty quickly. I said, okay, I'm going to take petroleum engineering. And it really was an influence of this young man, a friend of my father who had been studying petroleum engineering at Penn State. And when he told me what he did, I said, that's for me. I signed up at the University of Pittsburgh. And at that time, it's worth noting that the two outstanding universities in Pittsburgh was the Carnegie Tech, Carnegie Mellon University, and University of Pittsburgh. I wanted the Carnegie Tech because it was considered a top engineering school. But a friend of my father told my dad, he said, I won't even bother because a guy, someone with the name Lucio D'Andrea, an Italian, is not going to get into that school. Because in those days, Carnegie Tech was pretty much a school that took kids from Anglo-Saxon community, and us were not in that category, but the University of Pittsburgh accepted me, so I went there. Yeah.
So I understand one of your first big trips you made as a petroleum engineer was to Wyoming.
Well, I learned something about the industry because in the University of Pittsburgh, it's required for you to, on your junior, you had to you acquire some experience with an oil company. And so at the time, I was able to get a summer job to work in Michigan, in the oil field.
Oh, Michigan. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I went to the Ohio Oil Company. And so that was my first job. And then when, of course, in college, I also took ROTC, and I got a commission when I graduated to be a second lieutenant. And when I got the commission, I was told I was going to be on active duty for 2 years. And then because of the pullback of the U.S. Army, because of the Korean War was over, there was no need for long-term, for officers like myself to have 2 years assignment. They gave you 6 months. So I did 6 months of active duty at Fort Broward, Virginia.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful experience though, for Broward. I enjoyed every moment because we were very engaged, and I learned a great deal. I remember we were doing, as an engineer, you have to do, our primary mission is to do river crossing, you help the infantry to cross rivers and use the bridges to do so. And we were doing some training for Belvoir, trying to, a night exercise to cross the river at night. And we managed to cross the rivers, and when we got to the other side, at least at the time, we were all tired, and I had my M1 rifle with me, and Sergeant Short said, "Okay, guys, you can take a rest, take a nap or so, and just relax." So in doing so, I fell asleep. When I got up, the sergeant looks at me and says, "Where's your rifle?" I said, "Well, I don't know." I did have a rifle. Okay, so he knew he had it. The sergeant had it in his hand. He says, "Okay, you never leave your rifle. You keep it with you all the time." So he told me, he said, "Okay, you're going to take this rifle with you, and for a week you're going to sleep with it. You're going to go to the shower. You're going to mess hall. You're going to have it with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even in bed, you had that rifle." So that was a lesson it was a lesson that you look back to. It was essentially what the sergeant was saying is, your rifle is like you have to have it with you all the time. You cannot let it go because your life depends on it, and the life of your colleagues. So anyway, and so when I graduated, when I finished college, I was looking for a job, and I ended up working in Wyoming, up in near Casper, Wyoming. When I reported for duty, I was 18, 19 years old. I drove all the way across from Pittsburgh on US 22, across Nebraska, Iowa, Indiana to get to Wyoming. A long journey. And I did it in September. And as I'm driving in Nebraska, I get a flat tire. And I stopped at a gas station and said, I need to get this tire fixed. Well, he says, if I were you, I'll buy you some winter treads. I said, this is only September. Well, it snows very early. You better get some winter treads in your car. Winter tires, not just regular tires. Okay, so I bought the tire. And sure enough, as I continued my driving into Nebraska, I was approaching where it began to snow. It was snowing so heavily that it drifted a great deal. You could hardly see the road. And I remember in those days they marked, the roads were marked with yellow lines rather than white, just to allow you to see the road at night, because at night it was so dark. The snow would blow across the highway, you couldn't hardly see anything. So you had to have those yellow lines as a marker to guide you as you drove on. Anyway.
So when you finally got to Wyoming, what was that whole experience like?
Working in Wyoming, it was a Midwest. Where I worked was a company town. Basically, the company had oil operations in the field, and they provided you with some housing. I had a little cottage, a one-room cottage. It became my home during the time, and this was in the winter. It was so damn cold, and I had to do some basic training because I had to be introduced to the industry. I had to recognize what you do in the field. So when I presented myself to some of the people who worked over there, I used to call them, each worker in the oil field has a name. You don't call him a foreman. He was a roughneck. He's the one that does the drilling, and then the one that poses. There's another name for that job description. Anyway, so my basic orientation was to help to pull the pumps out of the hole on the derrick. Oh, they call it monkey board. The monkey board. The derrick has a platform. They used to call it monkey board. I had to go up there, climb it up about 80 feet up, stand on that monkey board, and help pull a pipe out of the ground to be cleaned and so forth. It was so darn cold. And the wind would whip across the prairie. I mean, it was so cold that the routine was you went up to work for 2 hours and you came down for an hour to warm up, and then you went back up. Ooh. It was so, and you put so much clothes on it. It was so cold, awfully cold, because it was open space in Wyoming, so it was very cold. And I lived in, for dining, to eat, there was a little restaurant in this village. That was the only place to go to have something to eat. And so at that time, living at a cottage, I began to, and before I left, I began to establish a relationship with my future wife, Vija, so we got to know each other a little bit, and then I went to Wyoming. And when I was in Wyoming on Friday night, there was nothing to do. I went to the bar, have a beer or something like that. So I would write down a letter to my future spouse at the beach. Every Friday night I write a letter. And then years later, I found this package in all my documents in our home. I said, let me look what's in this envelope. And sure enough, all the letters I wrote to Monk, to the beach, and to my wife, she kept every copy of it. So I have a stack of them. And
was that pretty much your only form of communication with her?
Well, on those days, yeah. The telephone was, the key to the phone was very expensive, so. Yeah, it was, Friday night, sit down there, write a letter, and go to the local American Legion had a home, a place to meet, and I'll be invited to go there once in a while, have something, a beer or something like that with the guys. But it was very lonely. The town of Midwest, only about 300 people.
Really?
Only 300 people. And the biggest town was Castro, which was 60 miles south. So, yeah. Pretty lonely, yeah.
At what point did you come to the D.C. area?
Yeah. Well, while in Wyoming, I sustained a very bad injury on my left arm. It happened while working in the Midwest. I was doing, my job was to go around in the field and check the wells, and they gave me a pickup truck. And one morning, on a Sunday morning, I went out to the field to do exactly measure the pressure on the well. It began to rain, and the soil in Wyoming there was essentially, it's called bentonite. It's a clay. Once it gets wet, becomes like a very slippery and icy. So I was driving around the field, and all of a sudden I bumped a stump and the car pickup truck turned over and and landed on my left arm, and it fractured my biceps. Fortunately, because I was soft, I didn't break my arm, but that injury really took a long for recovery, and I came back east.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I said, okay, I'm going to go home, go back to Washington, to Pittsburgh, you know. And from there, then I took a job with U.S. government.
And how did you hear about that job with the Department of Energy?
I learned it because many of a number of students that I graduated with, fit as petroleum engineer, ended up working for the government. And through that connection, I was told that I could, if I went to write a letter to the personnel director, J.B. Turner, the Federal Power Commission, that I was looking for a job. I'm sure he would hire you because he was really catered pretty much. What he'd done, what Mr. had done, he went to the University of Pittsburgh area to recruit petroleum engineers, and he was so pleased with what he was getting, the kind of students he was getting. He got to know us as a school and what kind of training we received, and through that connection link, I was able to get a job with the Federal Power Commission, first the federal agency. Yeah.
And what did you do there?
Well, there my background, then I began the work of the Federal Power Commission. Essentially, being a regulatory commission, it regulated all the aspects of the gas industry. So I was involved with processing application for permits to sell natural gas to customers, pipeline, distribution company. That was essentially, I was a regulatory specialist in natural gas, yeah.
And if I understand correctly, this was close to around the time you started making a family, right? Or was this before?
No, that before. Yeah.
Okay.
That in 1959, I got married in June of 59. When was it? Well, trying to remember how long I've been married. Hey, Vijay.
Yeah.
When did we get married? June of 29? No.
What?
My wedding year.
61 years ago. June 27th.
19.
What year did you get married? 1959.
Well, I had it right there. June 27, 1959. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, we got married, yeah. June 29. And so then we settled in Washington. No, not in Virginia first. Then got an apartment, and then lived there for a while, and then began to start a family.
And where did you get married to at VJ?
In McKees Rocks.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, McKees Rocks. It was so hot. It was, oh my God. That year, June 1959, the temperature was 93, 94. It was incredibly hot. And in those days, when you ran a tuxedo, not tuxedo today, those days were made of wool.
Oh.
Anyway, I was soaking with perspiration. And after the wedding ceremony was reception and so forth, we drove off for honeymoon. At the time I was driving a little French car called the Dauphine. Yeah, it's a very small car, miniature car. So we drove to Harrisburg, and that's where we stayed overnight. That was our first destination after we got married, our honeymoon place, yeah. But we're heading for, we had minutes to go to Cape Cod, but it was so hot that summer. And when we got up, to go to Cape Cod that morning, I said, hey, do you really want to go that far in this heat. I said, let's go somewhere else. So we decided to drive up to the Poconos in Pennsylvania,
Ah, okay.
that's where we spent our honeymoon a week. Poconos, yeah. In a place called PMI, Potomac Mountain Inn, something like that. PMI in the sky, that was the place, yeah.
After you were married, at what point did you start considering having kids and stuff like that?
Well, we began to have children pretty much immediately, really. I mean, we get the first child that was born, and 11 months later. I mean, yeah. We decided to have a family right away. We didn't wait. Yeah. So, and we were very prolific. We got a 1 and a 2 and 3, 4. And Nonno was delivering a baby almost every year. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you're working at the Department of Energy.
Yeah, that came later.
At what
Let me add this.
Sure,
that
yeah.
the same doctor delivered all our kids, Dr. Nakash, a doctor from Lebanon. So when we had the first girl, the second girl, the third girl, when the time came for delivering the fourth, I'm waiting. In those days, you had to wait in the waiting room. You couldn't go with your spouse in the living room. You had to wait outside. So I'm sitting over there, and I think it was when Senna was ready. The doctor walks in and said, "Lucio, you're a specialist." What do you mean? He said, "You have another girl." I said, that was number 5, I guess, or number 4 right now.
So after having a long line of girls,
Yeah.
what was it like when you finally didn't have one?
Well, it's funny though. I mean, we didn't plan to have a boy. We just like to have a large family, We just came from a large family. I only had a brother. So having a large family meant a lot to us. And
What were your most memorable moments from raising all of your children? Just a couple.
Christmas Day, when they all descended into the living room, waiting to open all the presents, and I mean, those were just memorable days because, we're reasonably well off, but I was, working for the government in those days, didn't make that much money, but we had to make enough money to live, but not couldn't be extravagant, but we managed to do all we could to buy the kids a gift. And the only thing I do remember, I would give them a bicycle, and then of course came the time for me to put it all together, because it came, I had put all the pieces together. It became a job to assemble 3 or 4 bicycles for the kids, but it was a lot of fun.
What was it like sending your kid, like Candida, your first one? What was it like just sending her off to elementary school on the first day? What was that like?
Oh, geez, there was a special ceremony at the school that Lakana was attending, and she was all dressed up for this ceremony that she was going to be part of. And she fell and took a spill and struck her forehead. It caused a puncture in her forehead and it began to bleed excessively. So she, was kind of messy. But we're very happy now, They all pulled together. There was, some, of course, invariably in a family that size, there'd be a lot of quarreling and fighting. The one child that of course was kind of rebellious was Maria. She always had this tendency to really rebellious, so we had to calm her down a bit. But otherwise, it was fine.
When did you get your job offer with the United Nations in Geneva?
I ended up working for the UN, because I when I was at the Department of Energy, the State Department invited me to be a delegate for U.S. government to an annual meeting of the Committee on Gas and Economic Commission for Europe, which met in Geneva. That took me to Geneva in January and November for meetings of this committee. And the committee was specialized in, and the commission, was established after the war to help with the recovery of Europe. And the United States was a principal proponent for that organization. And so that travel took me to Geneva annually, twice a year. I got to know the director of the energy division of the Economic Commission for Europe, Mr. Janssen from Belgium. And one year, as I was ready to depart come back to the States after the meeting, he approached me and said, Mr. D'Andrea, why don't you have a coffee with me? I want to talk about something. Oh, fine. I said, well, you know, the gentleman from Turkey does the work for us for natural gas, is retiring, and we need to replace him. Would you be interested in being a candidate? Wow. Yeah. I said, well, of course. But in those days, maybe not so much today, in those days it was not easy to get into UN system because in my case, UK, Great Britain, France were proponing their own candidates for the position, and I was going to come from the United States, so that I had to compete against the French and English to get the job. And fortunately, at the time, I knew a friend, a wonderful man called Mr. Politi, that would spend time with him. He was a retired executive for one international steel company, and Frank Politi, I shared with him the idea that I wanted to enter UN systems, and said, maybe I can help you. I said, well, I have connections, and so he knew at the time the head of the CIA, Mr. Casey. Wow. And he spoke to him and gave a good word to him and says, sure enough, that connection helped me to get the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
So once again, you're leaving a country and going to another one.
Yeah.
What was that all like? Because now you have a whole family with all your kids.
Well, the family didn't come with me at the beginning. I came on alone. I mean, when I got the job, I told Mom, I said, listen, I'm going to go there myself to set myself oriented, to get acquainted, and then I'll call you and the family. So that's what I did. I reported for duty in Geneva, and a few months later, Dvica and the youngest of the kids, your mom, Laura, and Lisa came to join us.
Oh, okay.
Because Maria, they were already working, but I said, and I told Lisa and your mom, Laura, I said, you know, there's an opportunity for you to join me overseas, but I told them, I said, you know, I've seen kids in Geneva through colleagues I met who came to settle in Geneva with their parents, but they were not happy because they didn't not happy. They wanted to be in their own country. And I was aware of that, so I made aware to Laura. I said, listen, if you come with an open mind, if you go there because you want to acquire a new experience, you're going to enjoy it. But if you go with that, I'm not like this, the United States, I'm not like I want to go back, you're not going to have a good time with it. You're going to have a miserable time with it. So they joined me, and sure enough, they integrated themselves very easily into the community where we lived at the time, and they started French, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So, what did you do at the United Nations?
Well, my specialty, Economic Commission for Europe had a number of committees. One of them was Committee on Natural Gas, which was involved with the integration and development or marketing of establishing an industry which was more much a market-oriented industry than a central economy as such, as centralized operations. So my job was to help in adapting and introducing to these countries of Eastern Europe, like Bulgaria, Romania, Soviet Union at the time, to learn and understand the principles and practices of an industry that was a much American-oriented industry. So that was essentially a lot of training, a lot of seminars, missions, and it would take me visiting governments in these Eastern European countries and get to know the people and show them what are the principles and practices that we applied in the West. Yeah.
What were some of your most memorable times in the UN?
Let's see. Well, okay, the most memorable time is when I managed to set up what I call the guest center. When I was there, it was very difficult to get UN financing to help these countries of Eastern Europe to introduce practices and procedures that were more compatible with our system on the West. So I said, what can I do to make it easy? Because I need some funding. And through some American delegations and delegates I met, they would come to Geneva annually for this meeting of the Committee on Gas. And now, one year I approached them, I said, listen, I would like to set up a center that would help these countries with making transition from a standard economy to a more market-based industry. And I said, but I need some financing. And he said, what would you like to do? I'd like to set up a guest center where we have people come in and be trained. I says, but I need some funding. He says, okay. So through that connection with industry reps, I managed to raise some $450,000. Wow. To get the center started.
It's crazy.
And it went on for a while. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was very successful. Yeah.
And at what point did you stop doing UN work and come back to the United States?
Oh, geez, Tom. Well, it reached the point in UN you had to retire a certain age.
Oh, okay.
So my time came up because of my age, so I had to leave the UN system and come back to the States, yeah. But I do remember those funny situation. I met, because of my position with the UN in Geneva, the US embassy, not the embassy, the mission of the UN, of the United States in Geneva was not an ambassadorship, was a mission, but had an ambassador. His name was Joe Paterno. I got to know him, and his practice was that every 4th of July, he would invite all the Americans to celebrate 4th of July. And he was at the mission to do this, The mission was located not far from the UN building.
Okay.
And his tradition said, I'm going to make this a real American tradition. We're going to have hot dogs, hamburgers, and ketchup and beer. And this guy this pastor would dress up like Uncle Sam. That was his highlight of yeah. But there were some interesting people that I met over there. Wonderful people. One was from Austria. And then the one thing that stands out during my experience with the UN with the energy division. And then, I began work at the UN. Eventually, I came to the point where I became deputy director of the energy division. But I had an assistant, a Russian by the name of Alexander, who became my assistant and became such good friends. Through him, I managed to be invited to go on a mission to the Soviet Union at the time and visit the Soviet Union's gas operation in Siberia. That mission took me all the way to Moscow. And from there, we took a helicopter. No, we took a flight to town on the Arctic Circle. And from there, we took a helicopter to allow me to visit and observe the operations of the natural gas industry in the Soviet Union. And I remember in Siberia, in the helicopter, it was all white, snow. As far as I could see, nothing but white. And then once in a while, you see a little shack. And I would ask her, what is that? They said, oh, that's the Gulag.
Oh.
Those are remnants of Stalin, the Gulag.
Wow.
Yeah. This is where Stalin would send dissidents, people he didn't want to die, really. Put them in those cabins in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
So, would you say you gained any kind of new perspectives working in the UN with people from all sorts of countries?
Yes. It really it's an eye-opener because it broadens your perspective. It allows you to develop an appreciation for the diversity in different cultures, which is so essential to a world that has to live, and learn to live together. Because I met, in UN, in commission, I became friends with delegates from Romania, Bulgaria, Austria, England, all the member countries. And they're all wonderful people.
Wow.
I remember when I went on a mission to Romania. This was the time when dictator Ceausescu was still the dictator of Romania. Desperate, really. An awful man to be running a country, and he was so just desperate. I mean, he had the reputation of, to get a sense of what his mentality he had. He would he was so concerned about his life that somebody would assassinate him. When he would travel to Romania, the villagers were notified in advance that he was coming by train, And they had to clear the community of all the people.
Wow.
You had to be, the train had to travel through the community by itself. No one else except bodyguards, Crazy, yeah. And then he was assassinated. Yeah.
So when you finally came back to the United States, at what point were you inspired to establish the Abruzzo Molise Society?
Let's see. Well, I was always a very active guy, I was always involved with society and so on. Then by going to the Italian church, D.C., or it was a church, this was at the beginning when I came back to Washington. I began to realize, I said, that there were a few people from Abruzzo Molise. They were attending the services at the church. Remember the Holy Rosary. And so I got to know some of them. And I said, listen, you guys, wouldn't that be nice if we have a society of our own here in D.C. called the Abruzzo Molise Society? Yeah, why not? Yeah, so 5 or 6 of us got together and launched a society in June 2000.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what did you all do? at first?
Oh, well, we held programs about the roots of Maurice, its history, its culture, and have dinners. Oh, I was very active. I mean, we were very busy with all sorts of things because we were fortunate to have the pastor in Holy Rossi at the time, Father Zanoni. He was so enthusiastic. He said, Lucio, that's a great idea. Look what you're doing to the church, because it began to bring some people back to the church. And so we had, we invited speakers, had short movies. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it went on for quite a while. Yeah.
What would you say some of the society's biggest accomplishments were?
Of society?
Yeah.
A scholarship. When we came up, we were able to establish a scholarship committee, raise enough money that we began to give scholarship to scholarship a year. And the criteria for the scholarship is that you had to be a descendant. First you had to be a descendant of somebody from Abruzzo Molise to tie it to the regions, And then we were able at the time also to establish a link with our own counterpart in the region, in the authorities of Abruzzo Molise. And through that relationship and association, we were able to get some money from them to help us with our scholarship.
Wow.
It doesn't exist today, but that was the case in this day. There would be a national contribution because the regions were interested in promoting it, the regions for people that settled in the States, immigrants. Yeah.
So, about a year or two ago, you received an award from Italy, correct?
Yeah.
And what was that for?
This minister at the Embassy of Italy, Caterina Flumiani, became aware of my commitment and engagement with the Abruzzo Society, and the fact that I also had established similar society in Fairfax, through the parishes, St. Mary of Sorrows and Nativity. So essentially, beside the Abruzzo Molise Society, I set up a couple other societies in St. Mary's and Nativity. So Caterina became aware of all this, and she said, "Oh, this guy deserves some recognition." So she put my name into the Italian government to give me this decoration, Cavaliere della Repubblica. Yeah.
And what was the title of the award?
The Italians call it Cavaliere della Repubblica. In English translation, there's Cavaliere is a knight.
Oh, okay.
A knight, essentially a knight, like the British knighthood with the Republic of Italy. It's bestowed by the President of the Republic of Italy to Italians abroad, It was an honor that really, I was not expecting it because I knew about it, but I said, gee, to get an honor like that, you really had to be somebody special. Now, I didn't consider myself anything special, but anyway.
So, you're in the venue where you received the award. The person is handing it to you. What are your thoughts?
This was the ceremony took place at the embassy, Italian embassy in Washington, and it was a very emotional moment because I said to myself, I was nothing unique. I said to him, hey, I am an immigrant kid like me from Roccamandolfi, a village of over 300 people or whatever, comes to the United States and it's given this recognition. I was pretty humbled. Yeah, pretty humble. Yeah, humility it sets. Yeah.
So I have one last question. Of everything you've done in your entire life, what would you say you're most proud of?
Proud of what Jesus done. Well, really, the bottom. The most proud thing is to have such six wonderful kids. Wonderful. And we're so proud of them because they really, I get emotional, but they're so wonderful because they're very caring to each other, they're caring about us, they bond together. And I always just used to tell my family growing up, I said to my kids, you could have the best friends in the world, but the best friend for you is your family. The family holds you together. When push comes to shove and you're really desperate, where do I go? Your best friend can help you, but when you turn to your family, because you are there, you're part of them by blood or whatever. It counts a great deal, yeah. So to me, anyway, I mean, had the privilege to and raise six wonderful kids is an accomplishment I'm very proud of.
Well,
and of course, and all the grandchildren that come along with that, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm rambling a lot, Tyler, but hope
for taking the time to tell
Thank
your
you.
amazing story.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's
Thank you.
We're done.